Afe Babalola has given Dele Farotimi a series of conditions that he must meet before the defamation lawsuit filed against him will be dropped. In this video, we shall be going through all of these conditions listed by Afe Babalola, so you can see how stringent and how difficult this listing might be. First thing first, it's very important and paramount to know that Peter Obi, the Labour Party presidential candidate during the last election, paid a courtesy visit to Afe Babalola to plead on behalf of Dele Farotimi. In that same day, Peter Obi also visited Dele Farotimi in prison to relay the information and the conditions being set aside by Afe Babalola. With all of that being said, let's go through all of the conditions one after the other. The conditions that Mr. Dele must meet 100% before the lawsuit will be dropped, probably. Well, the very first one is Dele Farotimi should plead guilty. This simply means that Mr. Dele, when he appears in court on the 20th of December, will have to plead guilty to all of the 16 counts charge leveled against him by Mr. Babalola. Is this even a good idea? Is it a wise idea for Mr. Dele to come up and plead guilty in the law court? Interestingly, Mr. Dele gave responses to all of the conditions, and we'll talk about it later on in this video. The second stringent condition set aside by Babalola is that Dele must publish in a national newspaper his rebuttal. Well, just in case you don't understand, let me break this down for you. Mr. Dele Farotimi must publish in a newspaper stating that all his wordings and everything he said about Mr. Babalola in his book are all false. And this must be published in a national newspaper like Vanguard, This Day, and so on and so forth. This is very, very interesting because whoever is advising Mr. Babalola is actually very, very intelligent and one step ahead of every other person around. And like I said previously, Mr. Dele Farotimi gave his response. He gave his own conditions before he will accept any of this listing. And like I said, we're going to talk about it in this video, so stay tuned, and this is going to be a very, very interesting one. Well, moving on swiftly, the third condition being set aside by Babalola is the fact that Mr. Dele must bring down his book, the book he published on Amazon. But as we speak, I don't think Mr. Dele would ever want to do that, because just recently on the 9th of December 2024, Afe Babalola obtains court order to block sale of Farotimi's book on Amazon and other social media platforms. So as you can see, this clearly illustrates the fact that Mr. Dele doesn't want to buy into this particular condition. But then we'll go through his responses one after the other. But that will come later on in this video, so stay tuned. But as we speak, top personalities and individuals in Nigeria has visited both Babalola in his hometown and Mr. Dele in prison. These individuals are looking for a favorable ground between these two parties. They want this whole issue to be settled out of court, because as we speak, things aren't looking so good for Mr. Dele Farotimi. The system and the Nigerian judiciary are all stacked against Mr. Dele Farotimi. The best and possible way out is if this man agrees to settle all of these issues out of court. But then, let's look at some of his responses. Let's look at how he reacted to the conditions set aside by Babalola. The very first condition, as we all know, is that he has to plead guilty in court. He has to plead guilty to all of the 16 counts charged. This is a very difficult one to do, because if you go through all of the counts charges one after the other, you find very, very hard offenses there, which, like we all know, Mr. Dele did not commit. So for him to go out and accept or plead guilty to all of these 16 count charges, it simply means that he's putting himself in a disadvantaged position. But Mr. Dele gave a very clear response. In his own words, he stated, "Withdraw this case before I will apologize." That means Babalola has to withdraw the case out of court first before any apology will be tendered. And he's not going to plead guilty to any of these charges, because this might be a trap set aside for him by individuals that we don't even know. This might be a very, very big trap for him, because if he accepts this and plead guilty in court, it simply means that the court can be like, okay, since you are guilty, let's sentence you to the numbers of years you have to serve for the crimes you've committed. So you see, it's not a good idea for him to plead guilty in court. If Babalola wants to actually settle this whole thing, an apology from Dele is all that is required for this whole thing to be dropped, and not asking him to go plead guilty in a court of law. It doesn't make sense in any way, shape or form. And the second condition here is that he must publish in a national newspaper his rebuttal, which that is not so difficult to do, because his apology can be transferred into a written form and published in a newspaper, which can be done within minutes and even seconds. So that is not even a problem at all. And the third condition is that Dele must take down his book from the Amazon server. Well, this is going to be a very difficult one because this man invested his time, effort, and resources in making this book. So the alternative is that if Dele Farotimi takes down the book for the meantime, do a quick but extensive correction, take out some words. For instance, places where he called names of individuals in the country, he can actually remove their names and leave the sentence the way it is, but remove the name and use a different individual's name, a fictional name, to fill up those spaces. By doing so, no individual in the country can come up any day and say that he was defamed by Mr. Dele. But the problem is, this book, as we speak, has sold over 6,000 copies. Yes, as we speak, this book has sold thousands of copies, which made it a bestseller. So what about the books already in circulation? What will happen to this book? Will Dele Farotimi have to forcefully call back the sales of this book? Well, nobody knows, because already individuals purchased this book in digital format. That is to say, they have this book downloaded on their phones already. This will be a very difficult one to do. But then, since it's a condition, these guys, the parties can still sit down together and renegotiate on a safe and a landing ground. So in summary, Dele Farotimi is asking this man, Babalola, to take down his lawsuit before any form of apology can be tendered. Yes, an apology isn't a form of defeat. It's not even a form of showing weakness. It's just a fact that as humans, if you offend someone, the best way to go about it is to actually tender an apology, which is not a form of weakness. Moving on swiftly as we speak, Mr. Dele Farotimi still has a lot of time to think about all of these conditions because, yes, he's going to reappear in the court of law on the 20th of December, which is exactly 7 days from today. Yes, he's going to appear in the court of law next week, Friday, so he still has a lot of time to think, rethink, and come up with a strategy to counter all of these allegations or to come to a safe and landing ground between himself and Babalola in question. Moving on swiftly, some might think pleading guilty in court is the best way to go about this whole thing, but no, it's not, and it can never be the best way, because you're right now on your screen at the 16 count charge leveled against him. And if you go through this whole count charges one after the other, you'll find very, very strong offenses here. Let's start with the very first faction of this count charge, which states false publication alleging corruption and undue influence on the Supreme Court. This is a very strong one. The second is criminal defamation aimed at damaging Babalola's professional reputation. Since there's a word criminal here, that's transformed this particular line of offense into a criminal charge, which will not be easy on the individual. And the third one here is assertion of systematic corruption orchestrated by Babalola and his associates. And the fourth one here is the accusations of judicial manipulation with specific examples from his book. Well, these are all huge and highly incriminating count charges here. But then in our previous video, we intensively investigated Babalola. We investigated every single thing that Dele Farotimi said about him in his book. And we exposed a lot of hidden secrets and hidden debts that you've never seen before. Yes, in that same video, you see the associates of Babalola. You see the politicians that have used Babalola's law firm in the past. Well, in that same video, you see how Nyesom Wike has received favorable conditions and declarations from the court of law. In that same video, you see how the federal government plan on building or constructing 40 houses for 40 judges in the country. Does that even make sense? In that same video, you see how the Nigerian judges came out to send strict warnings to all Nigerians, claiming that if any individual called them out or accused them or tried to disturb their process, that individual will be dealt with in 100%. Anyways, if you want to watch that video and see everything for yourself, well, we have that video showing right now on your screen. So click on this video to watch and understand. Click on this video and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for watching.